I 5 minut przerwy, zanim ruszymy z następną prezentacją. Raz, dwa, raz, dwa. Jeśli jeszcze ktoś potrzebuje kupony wymienne na napoje, to zapraszam. Za minutę będziemy zaczynać. Proszę powoli o zajmowanie miejsc. Bo tak opis jest po angielsku.
In English. Tak. Mhm. Okay. Hello, everyone. Do you think we can start? Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm honored to be here, and I'm going to entertain you for the next half an hour, so yay. Okay, so today I want to talk about something that comes from my personal experience and working with others. So very often we as developers are so focused on code readability, and this is what we want to achieve. There's no roof to that. But on the other hand, sometimes maybe we lack focus on other things, and I'll try to convince you for most of the time to put a little bit more effort into the different scopes. Okay, so without further ado, let me start. So it's already late, we are all tired, so a little bit of excitement. Okay, so what are we going to end up here? 2, yeah, that's perfect. And this is something that I wouldn't call a readable code. It's not obvious to me at all why this is true. And maybe one more brain teaser. Okay, so we've got like our grade function, and we're going to try return 1. Otherwise, we will accept in case of the exceptions. I know it's too broad. We will return 2. If no exception, we will return 3. And finally, we can return 4. So what are we going to end up with? 4, yeah, exactly. And those are quite tricky questions, and actually you all got it right. So it convinced me that usually this is not an issue. So yeah, it's all. And we all love riddle like this. This is why we want to spend time in things like this. But this presentation won't be about that, so sorry about that. Sorry if anyone is disappointed. But I think there's so much more than code readability, and we should focus on something even better than a readable code. And to me personally, something better than code that is readable is code that I don't have to read at all. Okay? And this, this is especially handy when the size of the project grows, and the bigger it gets, the less it's get feasible to read all of the code base. So I would advise you to consider a new metric, and which is going to be about just how much code do I need to read in order to use something. And like I've got like, maybe it's just a function header or a method header, or it's body. So I have to read the body of the method, but body alone. Maybe I need to read the body, and on top of that, I need to read some headers that are included in this body, or maybe body of the body of the body. You already know where I'm heading at. And maybe even we've got like some external calls and like databases, REST APIs, processes, things that are out of our scope. They're not part of our team, and we need to use them as well. Let me show you just one example of code that, to me, is not readable at all. This is an example from open source projects. It's called Django Oscar, and it's an e-commerce platform built on top of Django. And I think Django is very rich when it comes to some anti-patterns, so I use that one. And during the, maybe based on the chart that I presented you before, you can guess that probably based on the header alone, we are not able to use that, okay? And I don't know what currency is actually. I don't know what those abbreviation means. It's like excluding tax, included tax. There's like some nonce, code tax. I don't know what is it. But fortunately, the owner of the library provides us with some comments. So there's great comment section here, and we can learn that actually currency is a three-character currency code. So yeah, that's better. And we know what int tax is, so those are decimals. And on top of that, we can discover that actually tax code is not included. So and this is public application, open source, online, and it's maintained. Its last commit was 3 days ago, sorry. And actually, they struggle to be consistent with their code, with their comments, and it's very easy to jump into the conclusion that, oh, they're just lame, and we wouldn't do that. But actually, what I think happens is actually the lack of a system that prevents them from being, like force them to being consistent and coherent. So that's what happened. And you can tell, oh, this is not bothering me anymore. I've got my MyPy, I've got type checkers, so I'm not interested. And actually, if we decided that, okay, let's add type annotations and let's add MyPy to that code, it helps a bit, but it's not a silver bullet. And what you can see is that still there's like currency, and the interface implementation here says that it's string. So I still don't know what this string is all about. I've got like comment that to some extent guide me. Okay, this is this 3 little character code, but it's still mysterious to me. And I can like create a variable like PL currency, UR currency, and am I allowed to add those currencies together? Like, we already made fun of Python that you can add like true plus true, and it's 2. So that's stupid. But on the other hand, we've got like a string, and I can use some operators that are not, that shouldn't be available for a currency as a data type. So, yeah, I think this is the same thing that we've seen before, and it's not making things easier. On top of that, things that maybe you can be concerned about is actually, is like PLN and PLN capitalized the same thing or not? Actually, in the Django Oscar, those are like 2 different things, and within the price object, there is a check if the currency matches, and obviously it's case sensitive, so you need to know how the code was used in different parts of codes that maybe you don't want to know about, because you are supposed to do a little piece of your code, and then you need to look up in the different places and make sure that you're consistent with what you've got. So actually, the encapsulation of the pricing object is not met. It's all over the place, even though it looks like it's there. And to me, reading a code like this is still a piece of cake, and usually you can end up with something even more difficult to read. And I actually was inspired for this talk on the last PyWaw meeting, when the FFmpeg Python was described. And there is this great method, probe, that converts what Python gets from the CLI into a usable, readable, and easy to maintain as advertised version of the data. So let's just put the same measurement to that method. And what I can tell, like, to me, obviously, I can't use it just by the header. So the first checkpoint is not met. So let's jump into the body. And then it's even more difficult, because I've got like my quarks, I've got like args, and there's magic. So there's sub-process be open. So there's external process being open, and there is no code in the code base that I can read, and I can learn from how I can use it, okay? And there's no thing like this. And if I've got like production code like this, and I've got some media that I don't have access to because I don't have production access, maybe I do have access only for local environment, then I'm totally working in the blind. So I don't know how to test the code actually, and what should I expect. And so the encapsulation of this method is not met. We as the owner of this library just failed to provide the information about FFmpeg because the knowledge was there. So someone who wrote actually this code knew what is going to be returned, but it's not stated in the code. Okay, there's something else. There's a documentation. I might look up into the FFmpeg CLI. So what I shouldn't be forced to do that in the first place, or maybe I should read the documentation. Hopefully, the documentation will be up to date, and hopefully, when the documentation is going to change, my code magically will adjust, and probably it won't. So in a case like this, I'm forced to do the job by myself and write the proper class and protect me against the further changes. And so this is only for the arguments that I should pass into the to the code, and it does not. It's not better when it comes to the information that I'm going to receive, and I'm going to receive basically JSON loads from the process. So God only knows what is it. I don't know actually. I look at this code and I think, okay, it doesn't bother that much. And I'm talking about this because to me very often you can actually find something like this in the production code. Maybe it's like hidden somewhere, but whenever you need to like work with code like this, it's not about us being able to understand the Python, because this is the easy part, but understanding the all external dependencies, this is not something that is that easy actually. And I don't know if this is a riddle that we enjoy that much actually. And I think that, yeah, I was curious what the React is going to be, but I just wanted to show you that it's not like there's nothing particular in Python that prevents you to do that right, and I know Java. And if you go to the same library, this is Java FFmpeg CLI wrapper, the result are you going to get is actually a beautiful class, and it's not only one class, there's a whole module, and like you've got like plenty of information what are you going to get in return. So for instance, you've got like your prop result, and the prop result is component, and it contains like streams, and those streams are components of chapters and so forth and so on. So there's huge information there. I don't have to use my IDE, I don't have to have file in my hand. I can read the code that I told you before that maybe I'm not that keen to do that, but actually it's still better than some external data sources. So, and this is the code that is actually used in many different production environments in 2024, and it's in Python. So I think it's about the community and the approach that community takes when it comes to typing, using classes, and being strict with types. This is very often not something that we as a Python developer came from, and very often there's a lot of like Python enthusiasts that write something and then they want to make professional huge code bases, and they struggle to organize that because the ecosystem is not supporting this. The example that they show is not supporting this. So someone may say that, oh yeah, but this is a lot of work, obviously, and it's like maybe like maybe up to 800 lines of code in the Java documentation comparing to the Python version, and for sure it takes a lot of time, but this time is going to be wasted on the behalf of the users of this code. So whenever actually you need to use like Python version of FFmpeg, you're going to waste the time that the implementator of the library saved. And even though I think that it's just, I would say it's just too common in Python, and especially with external calls like REST APIs. It's very tempting to, for instance, use requests or async request, whatever. It doesn't matter actually at all. And just use that directly into your code, other than comparing to writing a proper client that will inform user of that code what's going on, how to use that, what's expected, what is going to return. And it contains, it's not only your external sources are involved, but if you write an API and, for instance, you allow yourself to use like a string as a type, it might be validated, but it doesn't matter. Still, this information is going to be lost if you pass over to the next layer just a string. So then it's string and it can contain anything, and it can be damaged unwillingly, and you can like pass something over to your database that maybe you didn't want to. And on top of that, like if you make your API and you combine that with types not being strict, you can actually get something and write something to your database, and God only knows what is going to be. So this is troublesome whenever the code base grow, and yeah, and it's going to be difficult to handle. So yeah, it's like you need to still rebuild that base, and you can think about the code as a documentation where there are proper definition of structures that you're expecting. And there's like so much more. I've like Django, and for instance, in Django, there's like this huge form. I don't know if anyone uses form anymore, but it's just great example how not to do things. And for instance, you've got clean data property, and actually in order to use clean data property, you were forced to use is valid prior to that. And this is still something that you'll not be able to read from the code. This is something that you need to read from the documentation, and you need to know about that. And it's obviously stupid when Django does that, but very often you can catch yourself with similar structure in your code. So whenever you've got like things like this, please don't force your user of your code to actually know the order of the method that should be called. You can just change the interface, and for instance, you can return a session object that can make a call, or just create two classes, and without forcing user to magically understand the resolution of the method. And the other thing, like more maybe more complex. So very often when you want to inform a user how to use your code, there are like generics, and there are like covariants, invariants. So all the types, if you want to introduce your types, you'll find that very often it's not only the types that you want to pass, but other derived types of your original type. So for instance, you can inform a user that you expect a list of animals, and based on your use case, maybe it's okay to have animal of a current species, like maybe it's a dog, and it's still okay, or maybe it's not. There are a lot of different ways that you can define what do you expect out of types and out of arguments. But I think the most important part actually is to be focused on how to prevent a user from reading the code. And for callables, you can still define like ABC and protocols, so that a user know how to define your policy, how to define your state, or how to define your strategy without actually being forced to read the entire code. This is not something that maybe is as natural as you will find in Java, like with interfaces and like or C#. And then it's like, I think to some extent built in the way of thinking. But for the Python community, I always quite often find that it's not the case. Okay, so that's it. Any questions?
Yeah, so I have one question. So like in PyCharm, I think professional, you have like information when you have like a doc string of a function,
Yeah.
it gives you information like, did you comment on this attribute? So you can see like in the case where you were showing the header, there was like there was missing like tax code,
Yeah.
and PyCharm would like show you that it's missing, right? And do you know like any linters like Black or Flake that you can implement in the CI/CD for you to like check if you have good doc strings for your like public functions? Do you know something about this?
So that's correct. Like PyCharm will help you with that. And to be honest, the only like honest way to do that, I would say, it's like a type checker, like MyPy, and I won't use comments to do that. Probably you can manage to do that as a fallback, but I don't think it's makes sense right now in having like MyPy and other tools.
Okay, sure. Thanks.
Just a
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. You've kind of compared, or let's say, tried to show the comparison of the Python approach to, let's say, the documentation or how the community does some projects. In this case, it was a Django Oscar, and you've compared, or FFmpeg in PG as in the example, compared to the Java, for example. Why not switch the environment? So if you're talking about the interfaces, for example, where in JVM they are first class citizens, why not just drop the Python and move to, let's say, strongly typed language, for example, based out of JVM?
Yeah, so very often you've got very unique use cases for Python, and I would say that, for instance, like machine learning community would agree that it's huge base of libraries that are already there for Python, and the pace of development for that scope is really huge, and you've got like Mojo and other approaches to make Python fast and scalable in that realm. So I would say probably you need to have like other incentives to stick with Python. I don't think there is just one language to rule them all, and if you want to use Java, it's okay, but if you work on a project and it's in Python, I don't think it's an easy decision to just switch to something else. It's not suitable for us humans and mortals. We need to stay with what we've got, but it doesn't mean that we can't improve our lives and we can add some syntax sugar that actually prevents us in the future from changes in the code.
Thanks.
Any more questions? Okay.
Thank you. Like from beginner point of view, because I'm a beginner, I wanna know the subject well. And is there any books or other sources of knowledge about this subject, like from beginners?
Uh, that's a very good question. So I would start with design principles, like Solid, for instance. There are like a lot of guidelines that will actually help you with that. But to some extent, I think the approach, okay, if do I have to read the code to actually use it is very good. And this is like practical guide how to challenge your code against. So if there's just one takeaway that you can have from this meeting is just to check your code against how much code it's necessary to read to understand that. But yeah, there's like plenty of information how to write a code and what's good or bad, and it's like never-ending story actually. Yeah, and actually Django to some extent is not the best idea to start. So there's like some pros and cons with Django. It's easy to start, but on the other hand, there's a lot of magic happens in Django, and usually the bigger the size the project gets, the harder it is to maintain that in Django.
Hey, thanks for the last question. Sorry, what's your name? Thanks for your question and for your note on that. So I was wondering this so many times. So why we are using Python and all if it's slower and if the community writes bad code, but why the market likes this and why the market sends us offers for a job for that. And I finally found the answer. Maybe Przemek will agree with me because he's the owner of the company. So, but basically the answer is that the development of with the Python comparing to Java is for the small to medium project 40% faster than Python comparing to Java. So you can be almost 2 times faster, and the big part is that you don't need this strong typing. And so my point is that I'm like realist, and the question is, do we even can we even compare the Java to Python? That's the 2 basically completely different tools. Yeah, like maybe we are comparing, aeroplane to bird, and that doesn't make even sense to compare the. Of course, we can inspire our community by their community and their community by our community, but does it make sense to compare those 2 languages in terms of the cleanness of the code?
I don't think it's just about the 2 languages and cleanness of the code. It's just about us being well educated and informed what's proper and what's not. And I think, yes, you can compare, and there's like a lot of technical challenges that you want to solve with your Python or Java, and maybe you've got your instance on AWS Lambda, and then you're interested with cold start, and you can see that Python starts quicker than JVM, and maybe if that's your case in your project, it's huge benefit to use that. And yeah, it's comparable. That being said, with Java, the main approach is class-based. Start with Python is totally up to you. You can do functional programming, you can do like block programming, and almost go to like structures. So the thing about Python is that it's relatively easy to start with, and that's great because we've got like great community, but then the switch from being hobbyist to getting professional, it's not that trivial, I would say.
Any more questions? One more, the last one.
Should I use types in all of my code base, or is it okay just to add it to the public API?
So whenever you need to refactor your code, I think there's like cost and the money that you're getting in return, and you need to justify that in terms of the business owner and the product owner. So usually I would start with the steepest grade approach. So I would cover all those external dependencies, because this is where I'm going to waste most of the time. This is where I'm going to spend most of the time and waste most of the time. And then, yeah, you can follow to extend your annotations to the rest of the code.
There is one more question, last one.
Actually, also somewhat of an answer. So you don't have to, because some tools do it for you. Like Balance does it. So, and typing gives you an option to actually have a sensible autocomplete on functions.
Okay.
Which is
If you can remind me a tool that will read that code with process being executed and JSON being loaded and return a dict to me, that would be great. But I don't think we are there yet. Maybe actually Copilot would do that in the future. I can see that coming, but it's not ready yet. I don't think that's the case. And especially if you've got like a third-party API, I don't think your tool is going to map everything into your Python code so that you've got like code completion already there.
yeah, like there are libraries. For example, Kubernetes has auto-generated API for Python, which is terrible.
Yeah, there's like a lot of tools like this, and you've got like whole libraries that allow you to generate code based on the API, but still there's a code that is a part of the documentation, and you can read that later and see what's going on there. And actually, it's not always that easy. As I said, sometimes maybe you're just not allowed to enter production environment, and the code is the only sensible documentation you've got, other than just reading the docs and hoping for the best.